So, beautiful people out there in virtual world, as we kind of, here we go, here we go, here we go. Thank you so much for your patience. Working with this technology is always exciting, and that is the real truth. It really is. It's always exciting because we learn something new, and it allows us to practice patience. So thank you for that. And thank you, team. I love you so much for all that you do. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Okay, welcome back. Oh my goddess, that morning session with our young ladies. Wow, wasn't that something? I mean, isn't it so inspiring to be able to, in some ways I feel like, okay, we're going to be okay. If our young people are doing this, they're teaching us how to be better adults. I mean, so inspiring, our youth panel. I just feel so grateful that we have these kind of beautiful young people, and thank you to their parents. Thank you for raising such strong, brave, loving, empathetic young ladies. Okay, community out there, I am very excited to get started with our presentations, our impossible projects. We got so much goodness on its way. We just can't stop, won't stop. And I'm going to introduce a really great friend of mine, someone who's actually been behind the scenes to also help make this Impossible Summit happen. One of my best friends who I've known for over 20 years. He's one of the most kindest and generous people that I've ever met. His name is Robert Jacobson, and he's an entrepreneur and an investor driven by long-term, he's really connected to space. He loves space, and with a talent for developing nuanced, boundary-defining solutions, he creates effective bridges between various enterprises and worlds of experience. Yes, he does. From merging interest and subject matter to propelling humanity forward via Space Myriad offerings. He's also the author. He just put out a great new book. It's called Space is Open for Business. And he leads an organization called spaceadvisors.com. I'll be sure to put that into our chat session. But I'm really excited to welcome Robert Jacobson, one of the most inspiring people that I know. Come on up here, and he'll introduce some of his inspiring community who are going to give us new insights in terms of creating a new economy as well as curbing the population. RJ, are you out there?
Hi, T. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you are. Hey, welcome.
Good afternoon. Good morning. Thank you for kind words.
Yeah, thank you for who you are. I'm
just so impressed that this is happening, and when I've caught the past few days has been really amazing, and it's just a wonderful job to you and your team doing outstanding work and bringing this together in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, it's kind
really
of amazing. Yeah, so thank you, and I'll leave it to you. So I'll hop
thanks, T-Bird.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here today. Again, I'm Robert Jacobson. We're going to next bring up my dear friend, Ray Potter. I first met Ray, I think it was back in 2009, 2010, might have been a little sooner. I've known Ray for a long time, and he's the first person that really hipped me to the idea of shared prosperity models and even cryptocurrencies, the different types of cryptocurrencies, and even concepts like time banking. And around that time, maybe I think it was around 2010, 2011, he released an awesome book called One, The New Abundant Energy Revolution and the Power of You. Recommend checking that out. And Ray has been always blowing my mind into new insights and keeping me on the edge on what possibilities for new economic models. Today, his topic is going to be the O-economy, which is, he describes as his unique design in technology, which is now available to provide new set of possibilities with real world use cases and responsive to new economic paradigms. So Ray is, his background, he's a systems architect and storyteller, and he's reframing our socioeconomic reality from extractive markets to shared prosperity networks, focusing on a return on intention, what we really want, while examining the instruments that we feel will get us there. And he synthesizes art, innovation, science, decentralized, regenerative economics, evolutionary strategy, with his goal of achieving universal sustainability. So I'm really pleased to have Ray participate in the summit. So Ray, if you will please join us on stage. We will have Ray Potter in just a moment. I'm going to leave.
There we go.
Hey, Ray.
Can you see me? Okay, good.
Okay, I'm going to leave.
Wonderful. Thank you. Am I on or not? I don't know. There we go. Thank you, everyone. I'm grateful and honored to share with you. And thank you, Rob, for such a kind and illustrious introduction. I don't know if I can live up to all that. But so what I want to talk about today is more than technology. It's really reframing of we manifest technology into existence, and maybe looking at our current reality and possibly reframe how we connect to one another to move forward. So I'm looking forward to diving in. I'm having a little bit of issue with sharing my screen. So if you would please screen share my first slide. Give it a second. There we go. So the idea of the economy is basically looking at the way we organize and share resources in a fundamentally different way. And it's apropos now. Next slide, please. These are very extraordinary, crazy times. We are living through volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity as if it's the new normal. And how do we get here? Is it our collective anxiety of chasing the future that we couldn't really guarantee, or is it the coronavirus? Is it climate change? Why are we here, and how do we navigate from here? Well, one of the things been really kind of fundamental to the way we've organized society thus far is, next slide, please, is that today we have a system of rents, and meaning that there is a projection of the future towards which we are paying towards. So all the way up the food chain, we are paying some sort of rent for the way we live, for the way our communities work, for pretty much everything, all the way up the food chain, all the way to the construct of money itself. Now, next slide, please. Now, this presents a very unique set of problems in a very real world scenario, which is something that people are currently experiencing right now. We are living through a very difficult time where you may be in a vocation, or you may be in a situation where things are equalized, and you are now having to compete virtually with people around the planet for your same skill set, but that have a different standard of living. That's one issue. And then there's another industry, or whatever you're doing, is obsoleted. So your work can't pay your living wages. You can't pay rent. And if you can't pay rent, your landlord can't pay mortgage and property taxes, and the city can't collect property taxes and pay for services, and critical public services can't function. And if critical public services can't function, governments can't operate money or supplies, and printing more money, like what we just did with the stimulus in the US, can't really fix the economy. You're just kind of pushing the whole rent agenda forward. And this economy, the way we're going, cannot restore our ecology. And without our ecology, we are likely headed for extinction. And we have to stop. This cannot possibly continue. And we know that. And let's look at this thing from a different lens. Next slide, please. So, there's been a lot of talk about this, and, the kind of first round of digital approaches to decentralized currencies made an attempt at addressing this. The idea that you can project the future without having to account for what it is. The idea of fiat capital is now under major stress, and that is the ultimate rent collector at the very top of the food chain. So if that in and of itself is having an issue, then next slide, please. What do we prioritize? What do we pay, rent or food? And given that if the driver is profit, in other words, the value of supply is demand, basically securing an instrument for the future, then I'm wasting food in order to address markets or price. And things are not being addressed, and things are not getting to where they need to go. And we have issues like broken supply chains. So that's an issue. Next slide, please. And how we are looking at our natural resources. Recently there was fires in Australia, and one of the key reasons was the aquifers were privatized, and the water didn't get into where it needed to go, and we had a situation where what would have been a natural process just burned out of control. And we were facing not just that for natural disasters and fires, but we're facing that for agriculture, our food supply. Next slide, please. And this we know. Over the last 5.5, 6 weeks, we've been fortunate to slow down industry in a way, and what we have done for the environment has been dramatic that the environmental movement hasn't been able to do in the last 5 decades. So that in and of itself should make us kind of pause. But it's the choice between do we pay for carbon credits? Do we pay for ways to rent our prolonging of the future that hasn't arrived yet, and at the risk of our health, at risk of biodiversity and systems? What is the priority here? So next slide. We know that coming is crazy. This coronavirus thing is the first of probably many pandemics to come. So beyond that, there's a huge global recession looming, and beyond that is climate change. So we don't know what's ahead. And so how we deal with this and what we look at is going to be critical now. Yet, next slide, please. The choices we have seem very binary. Do we continue to exercise ideas that try to control the natural outcome? Or do we say the system is broken, let's break down the system and do something else? Well, either is not really leading us anywhere. First is the definition of insanity, doing more of what we did before, trying to control everything from people's movement to population to natural resources to geoengineering, all of these control mechanisms that we're putting in place, versus something is wrong with the system, and then now just saying that gets you kicked off of YouTube. So we're in a very precarious position. Both of these things are wastes of energy. And both of these options is that if I follow this option, then ultimately I'll have harmony. I'll have some sort of balance. So maybe we're looking at this all wrong. Next slide, please. We need to really check in and see where this actually emanates from and where is the root thinking that we're missing from the place, basically the building blocks from where we're coming from. Next slide, please. As we're finding out from this crisis and many to come, we fight nature. Next slide, please. Because we are nature. We breathe in and out with all of life that supports. I don't exist without the tree outside or the soil underneath my feet or the air around me. All of this is basically integral to who I am. There's more microbes in my body than cells. So we're in symbiosis with the natural world, yet we take the view that we're not. Next slide, please. And we talk about fighting the system. Well, what is the system? Next slide, please. System is nothing more than the series of agreements over time between you and I. And so all of these problems or all these agreements that we are surfacing now as symptoms of a rent-based systems that's not really working out for us, the SDGs that all of us have agreed on. At the fundamental core, it's still addressing system of rents. So this is overwhelming. This makes us crazy. This, puts us in this, what the VUCA are we doing right now? So maybe this is a time for us to just pause. Next slide, please. If you will, just breathe with me for a second. Understand that we breathe with all life that's around us. And there's another way to look at this thing that we may not have thought about. Next slide, please. You are not just a tenant. That relationship exists because of our construct of security and putting the idea of profit or projection ahead of performance and progress. There's another way of going about this. Next slide, please. In nature, competition and cooperation coexist. They're not isms, they're actually limits for one another. And this is true in our families, this is true everywhere we look in systems that are in harmony or symbiosis with one another. In a family, siblings compete for attention, but if dinner table was based on exchange or tit for tat or price for your meal, I don't think you would have a harmonious family. So we are not so different. We're actually looking for the similar outcome. Next slide, please. And so here's a new way of thinking about it. We talk about the idea of network of networks. We talk about this conference versus that conference, this platform versus this idea versus that idea, as if that if we just join this platform, follow this narrative, follow this storyline, everything is going to be fine. But what about what's left behind? I think perhaps if we think more along the lines of how we think of family and how we think of nature, instead of enrolling members into my platform or my network or your platform or your network, maybe we start with the very basic fundamentals of I am enrolled in you, I'm invested in you, and you are invested in me, and I myself is a network of multiple and multiple levels. So my network is accessible to you, your network becomes accessible to you. From this frame, we have a fundamentally different understanding of how we look at governance and to the information or the view that we understand. Next slide, please. In this space that we call home. This is our economy. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about, I don't want to give a technical presentation because there's a lot of kind of deeper explanation into the way we're actually producing, managing the DLT technology, the AI integration, the quantum resistant DLT, the machine learning, the gamification. There's a lot of stuff behind it. I'm just going to walk you through just at a very high level, technically, the way we're setting up in order to use this technology to deepen our relationships. So first and foremost, next slide, please. Construct of what we call modern money, whether it be crypto or fiat. Essentially today, money is made up of two different ideas. One, the idea of a reserve. If you think of it, it's like a pre-sales of future IOUs. That's the money that you have in your today. Okay, it's promising you something. And then the other side is the index or indices like GDP. What that's doing is the offtakes against those IOUs. So when one actually delivers against the other, then you have something that is believable and there's confidence. So today, these confidence mechanisms are broken. So from the logic of how we designed our system is essentially looking at reserves in terms of what is a real, true natural assets and what are our agreements against those assets relative to what is our identity or our role to deliver the performance, and how are we relating community, which could be our community of peers, our industry, our sectors, and so on. So fundamentally, structurally, this is kind of how it's designed. This is the logic of the economy. Next slide, please. And technically, we have some software modules where we're taking the components that allow you to create and engage with the community and remixing them relative to the needs of the community. In other words, there are things like managing your communications, managing your credits, tokens inside of a network, managing your ability to exchange, your ability to share or engage others to participate in something. And essentially, these three elements make up our toolkit, where you have software modules that can be reconfigured or repurposed for your network, and it's a network of nodes. So in other words, the nodes become the network themselves, fundamentally different than how the internet works today, which is still about kind of centralized command and control. This is more about decentralized way of managing information relative to what's valuable to you, technically. Next slide, please. And that represents some really interesting opportunities. This is the systemic view of Meta Token Reserve Index Protocol. This is a way to manage supply and demand equilibrium. Our networks is basically the set of tools or co-production protocols to manage the activity inside of a network. And our network exchange is a way to swap value created between networks with using these node networks that are kind of a systemic view of it. Next slide, please. So what this represents is a multi-dimensional view of currency and economy, kind of like the metaphor would be similar to paper maps versus real-time GPS maps. GPS maps tell you down to the second sometimes you're going to arrive at a destination because it's taking in multiple factors about traffic conditions, the number of cars on the road, a whole bunch of other factors that give a full picture of what's really happening, versus a paper map that just gives you a two-dimensional view, longitude and latitude, that this is how far I need to go. It only gives you the dimension of distance. So if you look at this in terms of the way we look at our economy, we look at production and consumption almost like a two-dimensional map. Like on an equalizer, it's the volume setting. So the volume sounds fine, but what about the bass, the treble, all things that give the richness to the sound of how we organize with the planet? So multidimensional. Next slide, please. Technically, this is an integrated solution. You have you have a meta token or a kind of a value standard protocol. You have a co-production protocol, exchange protocol that when certain conditions are triggered, they basically move information between one another, and we control that information relative to who we are in our communities. Next slide, please. And this, and I won't get into this for obvious complexities, but we've thought through with multiple collaborators how this impacts industries that are interconnected. How our supply chains are interconnected, how our engagement communities are interconnected, how our habitat communities or built spaces are interconnected, really spatial web to resource management, to community engagement, to all the other aspects of environment, transportation, what is known as a decentralized autonomous organization or a network of these things, or a DAO. So all this stuff is fine. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So now data gets you, okay? Now, next slide. This is a deeper question. Is this about more control or is this about compassion? Next slide, please. I'd say it's both. Next slide, please. Because this is about me and you. What we talked about, being co-invested and enrolled in each other. Next slide, please. Because when you care more about me, next slide, please, we actually start to operate like family and we can scale that. Next slide, please. Any one worldview doesn't define the future forward. It's what we can collectively see as the whole holistic picture. Next slide, please. And we live into a real-time reality. Next slide, please. Now, everyone is recognized as value creators. Next slide, please. Now, anyone can play on any community. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Nothing is wasted for anyone. Next slide, please. And basically, what's happening is that I am investing in you, you are invested in our networks, and we are co-invested in our network evolution. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. There's a lot more to it, and I would love to hear questions and answer questions in this regard.
Ray, thank you so much. First of all, I mean, the way that you're able to see how things are interconnected and spend time in the complexity of, I think, just being alive right now and being human with all the parts and pieces that are connected, and being someone who goes on the inside and can say, okay, here's where we've come from. Now let's really look to where we want to go. One of the things that we'll just have time for one question, but that's coming up is to sort of when we feel that we're all connected, how does one even start? What's one small thing that we can start feeling into feeling that connection and actually creating this new way of being? How do we even start?
So we're doing real world use cases for managing this COVID crisis, for managing food security, and in the space we're working with a smallholder farmer in Asia, and the key thing that we're doing on that project is really learning for capacity building. So this is basically a membership into a learning model, and what the learning model does, it and then agents go out and connect to the community. So in a very real world sense, you are basically connecting to as a membership network, and that's how we engage and move forward.
That's what's up. So people can find you at weare1.1. Yeah.
you can find me at weareone.one, and you can connect with me directly for your network or on your project at raypotter.com.
Ray Potter. I'm putting that in the chat, everybody. Ray, I love your heart. I love your mind. I love the way that you see things. I love that you took the time, because I know that a lot of people are wanting your time now to be here with us. And I love that you're taking the time to really help us come up with solutions and really create the kind of world we want to live in. It just means a lot. So I want to just give you a big thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. And I'm just grateful to share the space with you. And really, it's about all of us. There's no, it's not about any one group or any one solution.
That's right. That's right. And I'm really just glad you're on this planet. It helps me feel like I'm not so alone. So thank you so much. Well, my dear, we're going to move on to our next speaker. And so I will connect with you soon, Ray. And I'm actually going to bring up a really interesting new friend who was introduced to me by Robert Jacobson. I'm psyched to welcome to the stage Dr. Christopher Tucker. He is the author of A Planet of 3 Billion. And he highlights how biography and human geography and geostrategic thinking collide to illuminate the most pressing issues facing our world today. He kind of works at the intersection of technology, strategy, geography, and national security. He is the chairman of the American Geographical Society, where he launched Geography 2050, focused on trends that will reshape the geography of our planet, and is the creator of mapstory.org, so that we can understand our rich past, our complex present, and our uncertain future. He's also served as the director of National Intelligence Strategic Study Group, the secretary of Interior National Geospatial Advisory Committee. I bet if you tried to say that fast, it would be really funny. And the United States Geospatial Intelligence Foundation, and other roles. Well, what I'm excited to hear about him, not only his awesome heart, is that he's going to talk about how we can actually curb the population growth by empowering women. I am so about that. So, Chris, I'd love to welcome you to the stage and to really share with us how we can actually help save the planet by empowering women. So welcome to the stage, Christopher Tucker. Bum 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 bum. This is waiting music. Bum 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 bum. Do you like that, Chris?
Come up yet?
Yeah, here you are.
All
Here,
right.
that's the theme music for the day.
But yeah, you got to have a crash when you push the button. Otherwise, it's not real technology.
And I know that's right. And I just love us. So go ahead and take it away, Chris. Thank you for being here. The stage is yours.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. So thanks for having me at the Impossible Summit. I actually think, let's see. Uh-oh. My slide's working. Let's go back. They were a second ago. Give me a second. All right. Can you see me now? I hope you can. So I'm here to talk about bending the global population curve. Many people don't know much about population. Like, what class would you learn it in? Certainly don't learn it in your world history class. Don't really learn it in your literature class. They don't teach it at church, and you don't pick it up on your sports team. So since it's not on TV either, where would you learn about it? But that little red curve that we have climbing up the right-hand side of this slide should kind of give you an indication that it's a little bit out of control. So I'd kind of like to talk about the impossible task of bending the global population curve. So, it's such a disturbing issue to me that I went ahead and wrote a book, as Tanya said. And as I was writing the book, we were rounding the corner at 7.7 billion. And to put that into context, For those of you who remember that we celebrated Earth Day about a month ago, actually, that was the 50th anniversary of Earth Day in 1970. And in 1970, people actually paid a lot of attention to population because they recognized that we had already doubled the world's population from 1.6 billion at the turn of the century to 3.7 billion. And again, in just the past 50 years, we've more than doubled it. So it's this runaway nature of population growth where it's been fundamentally unmanageable, where no one really understands, what's driving it or how to possibly bend it. So I really want to talk about what seems to be this impossibility of bending that global population curve back down. But first, I'd like to point out, right, we need to bend it because we're undermining our planet's ability to support us as a species. And when somebody says, well, what do you mean by the planet, Chris? I like to point out this map, which I consider perhaps the most important map for all of us to grow up on, which are the unique ecoregions that together comprise our planet, where flora and fauna and singular water flows and climate and terrain all come together to create these unique places. And once they're gone, they're gone. So I'd like to give you just a little quick video tour of this, because while there's hundreds of these, the ones we live nearby, I grew up just north of the Everglades in Florida. When we live nearby it, of course, we grow up with it in our heart. We grow up with it as something on top of our mind, as a lovely place that we would love to see protected. But when ecoregions are destroyed on the other side of the planet, we somehow are detached from those. And, we have all of these notices in the news where some new species has gone extinct. And when they go extinct, they don't really go extinct on the entire planet. I mean, they do, but they actually go extinct in a specific ecoregion. As I always like to point out, there are no polar bears in the Kalahari, right? In the Kalahari Desert. But it isn't just with ecoregions on the land. You also have to remember our oceans that are 70% of our planet's surface, and actually 95% of our planet's inhabitable volume. And these are places that often, these are mapped right off of our coasts, where the human geography and our human footprint actually just kind of oozes into the oceans, and in many ways is annihilating important parts of our oceans. So I use the word human footprint, right? If these are the ecoregions, if this is the historic wildernesses, if these are the historic wildernesses we need to protect, what have we done to it? And this is just an agglomeration of 5 different layers of human footprint, our major interstates and major highways, because if I put all the roads, it would be black. All of the red is where all of our intensive human habitats are, right? Our cities, our urban areas. All the purple are all the toxic zones across of our planet. All the orange are actually dead zones that we have put out so much agricultural and urban runoff into the oceans. We've made it so that there's insufficient dissolved oxygen for marine life. And, just one layer that doesn't look good there looks better here, or worse, I guess, is that big yellow sludge, which is the ocean gyres. We have 5 continent-sized ocean garbage patches that just get bigger every year because we keep putting garbage out into our oceans. And it actually accumulates. It doesn't just dissolve. It doesn't biodegrade. Much of it, when we put certain items, they last hundreds of years. So how could we possibly have gotten here? I like to show this video. Starting about 100,000 years ago, we had fewer than 1 million individuals, Homo sapien, on the planet 100,000 years ago. And somewhere around 10,000 BCE, because of farming and because of starting to establish villages, we were able to protect ourselves and grew to 170 million at 1 AD, right? I grew up in the South. I like to say at the birth of Jesus, we had 170 million. Whoops, sorry. But, once we got to that point, and it largely started with more dense populations in the East, in China and in India, because of the introduction of the plow and organized agricultural administrative states, and agricultural societies that could sustain the calorie count, the amount of protein that we needed to support that number of humans. While the population started out there, we had people all the way across Eurasia also. But as you'll see, for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years after this, we really stuck at a largely flat population count. It actually went down from time to time, right? And it's not like nothing was going on. We had the Roman Empire, we had the Han Dynasty, we had the Silk Road transecting all of the Eurasian continent. We had all these amazing things going on, but yet we didn't have runaway population growth. And indeed, from time to time, not to create a COVID-19 reference, but we had disease hit us. So as while we started to climb after the millennium, by 1300, we got hit by the bubonic plague, and we saw such a large drop in global population that we are actually reforested large areas that had been settled. But something happened around 1700, and it happened in England. While we had all this development in China and India before, we had the Industrial Revolution, the Scientific Revolution, Agricultural Revolution, and the revolution in medical technologies and medical understanding, such that it was much easier for humans to thrive. Lower infant mortality, lower maternal death, longer longevity. And this is what ultimately happened. And I would challenge all of you to ask yourself, at what point do you think it went off the rails? About halfway between the first Earth Day and this last one, 25 years ago this year, I had the pleasure of being at a lecture at the inauguration of Columbia's Earth Institute. And that's where Professor Joel Cohen gave a lecture where named after his book, How Many People Can the Earth Support? And I would argue that this is the most important question we should all be asking ourselves. So I would, look at yourself and say, well, I'd probably never asked that question of myself. How many people do I think it is? And it's something you really need to wrestle with for a while before you can wrap your head around it. But some people say, oh, Chris, you're being silly because we could just have Thanos. For those of you who've loved the Avenger films, Thanos could click his fingers and get you down to, half the global population. To which I like to point out Thanos was wrong, right? It's not about the population only. It's about having an ethical process by which we are able to build balance between humanity and our planet. So it's not about taking the strident action that somehow reduces our planet's population by half. And then, there's always the next person who says, oh, Chris, coronavirus, you're getting what you want. And I always like to point out that pandemic is not a strategy. It is not something to say, oh, well, I'm sure we'll have a disease between now and when humanity destroys the planet, so we'll destroy a big chunk of humanity first. And I would say that is just not the way to think about this. But there are ways to think about this impossible task of bending the global population curve. And specifically, I'd like to point out that bending the global population curve is actually possible if only we engage in some creative thinking and some collective action. At the end of my book, I have what I call a cookbook for global leaders and global citizens. There's a whole bunch of things that all of us could do to make our world more sustainable and to put humanity and our planet in balance. But I want to focus on one in particular, bending the global population curve. People, the people who just think, this is an impossible trend. It's to break. It's an inexorable trend. It's something that just can't be stopped. I always like to point out that there are many places on our planet, many geographies where women are empowered, women are educated, women are integrated in the workforce, and they have access to family planning technologies. And in those places, you have much lower fertility, and in many cases, below replacement value fertility. So every year there's fewer people. And every once in a while you get the economist or the policymaker or the politician wringing their hand saying, oh, Japan has lost 500,000 people over the past few years. But yet I would argue that places like Japan are doing many of the right things. While you may say, really, are the women as empowered as we might like in Japan? Perhaps not. But on the scale of women's empowerment globally, you'll find many places where the women are empowered, educated, integrated in the workforce, and have access to family planning technologies. And it has a material impact on that population curve. What we need to do is empower women in order to close the gap between the demonstrated fertility, basically how many babies they do have every year, and their desired fertility. And there are many surveys out there by many organizations that kind of answer that question in different ways. We can talk about the details, but in the end, what we want to do is get demonstrated and desired fertility to match. And when that's the case, I would argue that you will have below replacement value fertility and your global population curve will actually bend. There is a virtuous circle that exists between women's empowerment, but bending the global population curve will require explicit focus, right? It's not something that's just going to happen because I have some women's empowerment programs. Every region, turns out, is very different. You can't look at the Nigerian example and the Pakistani example and say they're equivalent just because, you know, there might be certain things in fertility trends that look similar. So where I need your help, everybody that's on this call and anyone you may know that matters, that cares about these matters, I need your help to conceive of and execute what I call a mixed strategy ground game. We know the various pieces of a recipe that when put together could get us to bend the global population curve, but they'll need to be implemented in very different ways in different parts of the world that appreciate the cultural commitments of a geography, understand the historical moment that they're in, understand their economic imperatives, and also their relationship with their local wildernesses. So this is not something that is simple, but I do believe that the path is clear. So I would love to help make the impossible possible. I can only do it with your help. And I would appreciate any opportunity to collaborate with anyone on this talk today, listening to my talk today. And thank you to the organizers for having me on to give my talk. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled you're here, and let's keep unpacking, you know, because you're definitely onto something. And so, as you probably normally get, I've got a couple of different questions that we can unpack here. One, how do you propose eliminating humans?
Right.
And then two, mixed strategy ground game, question mark, include male responsibility as well.
Absolutely.
So I'd love for you to kind of really unpack that a little bit more, because you and I have had a chance to really talk about what that means. Because at first it's like, wait a minute, what do you mean? Just that's a lot of people. How can we go from 7.7 down to 3 billion,
right,
eliminating people? That's not what we want to do. But I'd love for you to unpack how, why, starting with women, and it's not about telling you not to have children, but about empowering them. So maybe you can breathe some more life into that so that, you know, we can understand a little bit more about this.
Yeah, and you know, you threw out several great questions in there. I often get them. I would like to start with the topic of male responsibility. Absolutely. I always like to point out, since the beginning of time, women haven't had babies on their own. Turns out men have a role in this thing. However, many men far too often have also played a role in not empowering women. So I think the key thing for us to recognize is it's everybody's job, male and female, to empower women. To say we need women's empowerment should not put the onus on all women to save the planet. I'd also like to point out that empowerment of women is a good in and of itself, right? It is an inherently good thing. It shouldn't be viewed as a means to an end. It just so happens, however, in this current situation, it also has the added benefit of helping us save our planet and our species. So, you know, I think we should all be motivated to empower women. And I think we, as we do it around the world, it would be great to think it through in terms of ordering and sequencing of the actions that we take, so that we have the best opportunity to put our global population in balance, kind of region by region, right? So mixed strategy, you know, for those who talk game theory and, you know, kind of strategy, there's lots of ways you can go about and do things. And it's often said that mixed strategies always win. Like if somebody just plays, you know, the same thing over and over and over and tries to apply it widely, you don't necessarily have a winning strategy. or I guess a winning outcome. But what we know we have is this kind of kit bag of building blocks of things that have been done successfully in some geographies, some of the least likely. You know, people go, oh, but what about the Catholics? And I'm like, well, let me show you a Catholic country where these things were done and it bent the global, the population curve in that country. And then somebody will say something about Muslims, or they'll say something about like a kind of, you know, another kind of region. And there are examples of nations, of cultures proactively deciding to bend their fertility curve, right? That probably run contrary to all of your assumptions. Certainly, as I researched it, I run into these examples. I had no idea. Like I wouldn't have thought that was possible, but it turns out it is. So the key thing, though, is some place, and there's currently literally no place, not the United Nations, not the World Bank, not the Justice League or wherever Superman hangs out. There's no place where people are gathering the data country by country, region by region, and with an eye towards bending the global population curve. And I think that it's not like the data doesn't exist. It's kind of nobody's job. So I would like to think that my book makes people think, whose job should it be? Whose job can we make it? And how can we collectively work together with some creative strategies to pull this off? Oh, and you asked another question I think is important. You know, we used to be at a total fertility rate, you know, the number of children a woman would have used to be like 6, right? And it's dropped down to 2.4. And those countries that are down at below like 1.8 are below replacement value. And I just like to point out that I'm not telling people to not have babies. I'm saying on average, let's have slightly fewer. So I've had questions from grandmothers say, should I tell my daughter to not have babies? Like, is that what, as a responsible grandmother, is that what I should do? And I go, no, you know, but if women are empowered, they tend to start within their childbearing years later, right? We have a species-wide norm of as soon as you go through puberty, you have a baby. That's what's been going on for 1.2 million years, if you're 12 years old or 13 years old. But the moment you start empowering women and pushing the childbearing years into 25 and 30, just the math works out in a fundamentally different way. So I think if we empower women, educate women, integrate them in the workforce, you'll get population dynamics that would bend that curve. And if we go from 2.4 to like 1 point something, 1.4, we could actually get to 3 billion soon after 2100.
Mm-hmm. It's very cool kind of looking at it at that way, as opposed to like, let's eliminate people, because that's not what we're really talking about, everybody. It's just about, you know, thinking about, you know, when we have more choice, when we have
Right.
more access to education, when we have opportunities to fulfill our creative expression, when we have an opportunity to step in our greatness, particularly as women, a lot of times we put off being mothers later on. And in certain countries, you know, everywhere around the world, there's something different. But in places where there aren't a lot of access, sometimes having a lot of children is the way to go, because that means that they can help make money. There's work, or their children die, you know, these different kinds of things. And so, you know, this is a big thing where it takes a lot of, you know, as Chris mentioned, a lot of education, you know, and as well as understanding the cultural context of who we're working with, to begin to implement ideas of, you know, birth control or empowering women in parts of the world where, you know, the populations continue to grow. So it's a very important topic. You know, I know that we've had a couple of different people throughout talking about empowering women. And I think that that's the way to go. When we have more choices, we tend to choose how to help others, as well as fulfill and step into our creative expression. And that's how we begin to slow down the population curve instead of staying in survival. Chris, we had one more question. Catherine says, I remember the organization Population Connection many decades ago. Is it still operating, or best, or what are, I'm guessing, Catherine, sorry if I messed this up, or what are the best organizations to impact population?
Yeah, Catherine, great question. You know, for me, when I wrote this book, I didn't write it from like an activism perspective. So I didn't do a ton of research into them. I first just kind of for myself wanted to try to understand what needs to be done and kind of functionally how would you do it. But then once I got the book out, I've been doing kind of the tour of all the population organizations. Indeed, Population Connection does still exist, as does Population Matters, as does the Population Institute, as does, and there are many great organizations. Part of it is they're all competing for donor dollars, right? They're nonprofits. They need to pay for their operations. And I think donors have to decide, which piece of that puzzle do they want to support? Do they want to support access to family planning in the developing world? Do they want to support education in the United States about issues of population so you have a more enlightened American public? Do they want to support the intersection of population and conservation, right, where human habitats impinge on natural habitats? There's so many good ones, Catherine. It's hard to give you an answer, and I don't really judge. The Margaret Pike Trust in the UK. I mean, I can go on. And there are great people really working on this. I will say there's not enough money. If we put in 1/10 of Jeff Bezos's total wealth into this, like, problem solved. This is not such a massive problem. It's just chronically underfunded in terms of having capacity to educate. And it's not just educating people on the ground, right? Educating an uneducated woman, right, in the developing world. It's about educating American leaders. It's about educating people in the developing world also, and getting us all on the same sheet of music. So I think unfortunately, I can't tell you which one to donate to. But I think if all of you started paying attention to those organizations and reading some of their materials, there's a lot of goodness out there.
Mm-hmm. That's what's up. There's so much goodness out there. Chris, thank you so much for bringing that today. And you guys, we put, thank you, Robert, for putting up Chris's URL for his book. You guys, please check it out for sure. And hashtag for Chris's book to spread the word is hashtag P3B. That's what's up. Right. So you can all see that in the chat. Chris, I always have enjoyed every time I get to connect with you. I thank you so much. We're all in the chat. People are thanking you. It's just really wonderful. Thank you for your presentation and kind of giving this other perspective. So we really appreciate it. I send you a big hug, and we'll connect with you soon.
And thanks for all the hard work to you and your team for the Impossible Summit. What a great job.
Thank you, darling. We so appreciate it. That's what's up. Boom.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Well, everybody out there in virtual land, I mean, you can say we have such an amazing, diverse, menu for you during these past 5 days. It's amazing. Our human community, right? Isn't it just so incredible? The varying perspectives, the heart, the wisdom, the experiences. I'm in awe about it. So I also would love to just kind of bring us all together in this moment, because we were going to have another presentation by our elder who actually opened up our Wednesday, Ilarion Merkuliev. And at the moment, it was a great presentation. He is not with us at this time, and I'm not sure what happened. We've been in connection the whole time. And so I would just ask all of us to kind of hold him in your heart right now, just in case something happened. Let's just kind of hold him in our heart space and send love and light, that wherever or whatever might be going on, that it's safe, ease, grace. And pardon the siren. I'm going to mute for a second behind me. Let's just hold. I never like to think the worst. I always just like to send the love. So whatever may be happening, I mean, as you know, things come up, technology, whatever, family stuff comes up. And so just sending love to our beautiful elder and our friend, who will also be joining us tomorrow with more Indigenous elders to close us out in ceremony for the Impossible Summit. So my loves, instead, I'm going to bring up my team just so you can see who's been behind the scenes working so hard. The people behind the curtain, you've seen some of us at various times, but this will be the first time we're all up on stage together. So I'm going to ask Carter and Noah, if you're there, Cynthia, if you're in the house, and Allie to step up on stage if you're there before we talk about some of the workshops, just so everyone can see us to give thanks. There's Allie in the corner. There's Carter. Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much, Angela. I just wanted to, as we're waiting for part of our other team to come up, I just wanted to give thanks to the hardest working team who never complains. Who never complains. Who never complains, never gives a rant, never cries, never whatever. It has been one of the most inspiring, exciting teams I've ever worked with, because when I think about the things that we're dealing with now and the things that are coming, I know that I want to be beside people who are committed and just ready to do the work. And this has not always been easy. I mean, anytime you learn something new, all our stuff comes up, but not one complaint, just always on top of it and working at, sure, no problem. Let's do this. And so I just want to give a shout out to all of you. And I know Lady C, Cynthia, yeah, there she comes. That's what's up, girl. Always on top of it and working at, sure, no problem. And by the way, we should pause our tab. So I just want to give a who have the other tab of hop in. There we go. There we go. So I just want to say I love you, and I wanted everybody to see us because this is one of the hardest working team. At night we get silly, we laugh. I mean, the incredible amount of work, bringing in a lot of the talent, the artists. Cynthia, I don't know if many of you have been able to check out our evening sessions that have been just out of control. This whole summit would not have been able to happen without this crew of people you're seeing on stage who've dedicated their time, their energy, all volunteer because they felt the vision. So I just kind of wanted to open this space. And, you know, if any of you wanted to share anything about the process or out to the people in terms of like what it takes, please feel free to share, and I'll just give a pause.
You know, what's on my heart, T, right now is just so much gratitude for all the people who've been listening in, because my sense is from the chats and just knowing some of the folks who are out there that you're all involved in a major change work. There's a lot of leaders and organizers and just next level thinkers that have been tuning in the last few days. And we can't see you right now, you know, at a regular conference, we would be, you know, tapping in with you. And I'm really just so proud to be part of a movement with this many smart people, this many committed people, fearless people, just willing to push outside the box and not give up in the face of whatever challenges we have. And I'm so grateful for this ad hoc team that just kind of came together. We were called together by Sister Tanya, and who just stepped up and said, I guess we're doing this. And so I'm really grateful, especially want to thank the tech team, all the people who've been involved in making quick changes on the website, adding new sessions, making sure the link was right, changing things, you know, making sure that all of the incredible people that have been part of our program are hosted as well as we can, given what we're able to do. And this is just a first. This is a jump off. We're going to be coming together again in smaller groups, topical groups, and we're going to be sort of putting our heads together. So it'd be great to get your feedback, and we would love your donations of any kind if you want to support us going forward and continuing to bring people together.
It's been a super, super, super pleasure to be part of this team and to pull this whole thing together. I mean, it's been fun for me personally on many levels, both convergence of folks from 30 years ago to now, older than you, Noah. I've known some of the people that have been involved in this. And it's been fun to figure out how to just put together the available technologies that are kind of off the shelf and how to piece them together in the most simple and seamless manner. And the sensibilities of, I want to give a shout out to the tech team too, just, you know, finding the right sensibilities about what's worth doing, what's too complicated, etc. It's been great. So, and it's just been fun. It's been fun to put it all together.
Cynthia, I'll go next. Yeah, I really echo that last sentiment, Carter. It's just been fun. Like not that every moment I'm like giggling and smiling and joyous, but when I connect all of it together, it's just been so much fun to meet each one of you and to kind of dive into our own little problem area, and we're like, okay, let's work and to see what it's like to work with you and to hear how you problem solve, or the way that you come up with the creative ideas, or the perspective that you might have about how best to approach some of these problems, or to be considerate of who's going to be involved and how they might receive some of our ideas. And yeah, it's just been a huge learning process for me, and one that I'm so grateful for. And yeah, just being ignited and encouraged by all of you sends me into this and into each thing that I do after this with so much more confidence and excitement. I'm just so thankful for each one of you.
Yay, to be here. You guys probably haven't seen me during the day program. I've been busy with the evening arts program. I hope you can check us out tonight. This is our last night for celebrating the impossible. Personally, I just want to speak about on behalf of the team. It's been such a seamless collaboration with T-Bird at the helm, because I think we all have similar values and visions on what we want to do. And she kind of just spurred that along, and we all brought our collective gifts and talents and just made it happen, and the speakers, the workshops have been nothing short of profound. I'm sure everyone can agree with that. And this is just the beginning. I think the movement already has been started. We didn't start it. We're just uniting with it. It's these tributaries and collecting to this river and this ocean. And we're just drops of water, right? Collecting and cohering. And we welcome you to just keep joining us in this movement, contribute to it in whatever way you can. And let's just keep it going, during COVID and beyond. So thank you so much.
Thank you, beautiful people, for your shares. And so, guys out there, my team is Carter, Noah, and Cynthia in the house. And Allie has been, helping with communications, invites, support. I mean, I know many of you out there also tend to be organizers and run events. And so you know how much it takes. There's so many pieces that go to this, from us writing the emails, to building the website, to following up, to teching the thing, to getting the videos. I mean, there's so many things happening behind the scenes. And what I've enjoyed is how committed and steady we are at just saying, okay, let's take things as they come. The Impossible Summit was about not being perfect, but about modeling what it looks like when you're committed and you follow through and doing whatever it takes to follow your heart and your vision. And what I love is how this whole summit has just been completely raw and authentic, which is exactly where we want to go in terms of the future we want to live into. And so, again, I feel like I just have the best team. Catherine, you said, how did we find each other? Well, I've been really lucky because I know all these people. I know them all, they're all my friends. And Carter, I've known you. I know about you, but because we're a part of the soup community in the Bay Area. But what's wonderful about Carter, everybody, is that now it's about 5 weeks ago, I sent out a message to a community that I'm a part of, asking for volunteers to be a part of a tech team for the Impossible Summit. And Carter responded. He says, I'm in, I'm here. Just count on me. And I was just blown away because he just stepped right in, and it was exactly what we needed. I just put the call out. I've known Cynthia and Allie for years. I used to live in the Bay Area, and I've known them for years, and we were always doing some form of goodness in the community. And I knew their work. I knew their heart. I know what they were capable of doing. And I called upon my sisters and said, hey, let's do this while we're on quarantine. Let's put some love in the system. Let's bring connection. Like, why not? We have nothing to lose. And they were like, we're in. Noah, I know from my China days, Shanghai days. And when I was over there, and when he was over there, it was just like we were constantly bringing communities together and collaborating on getting people to go deeper. And so I was like, yo, where you at right now on the world? Because I didn't know if he was in India or Guatemala or where he was. And he didn't even know where I was. And I was like, where you at, boo? Because like right now we're about to create something bomb. And you ready to get in? And he was like, yeah, I'm there. And so we all just kind of came together. And I want to give a little bit of shout out to our outer circle. In the I had called on really a lot of people that I love so much. And we're really kind of like 12-ish people from around the world. I want to give a shout out to Akiko over in Japan, who has been with us the whole time, but she's in Japan right now. I want to give a shout out to Dylan and Diana, who've always been a part of the first visioning of this, and Makako from when we started this vision last summer in the Dam and Her Eco Village Design Training course. I want to give a shout out to Adam, who you've seen, who's been my rock and has helped with a lot of communications and writing copy. I want to give a shout out to Paradox Doxy for being part of this. My girl Eva with her fierce energy. She's about to deliver a baby. You know, there's just so many. Robert Jacobson, who introduced, I mean, gosh, Robert, in the beginning of this, I was on the phone with him every day because he's put together a lot of things and just been in a great advisory. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody. Please forgive me if I am. But it all starts from just asking, and we just kind of came together. I had put also in the chat a GoFundMe. I know that you guys have been paying it forward and just have been here. Just so you know, we're going to be launching more and launching an even bigger fundraiser, because this is not the only. This is just the beginning of bringing communities together and highlighting. I mean, there's so many things that we can do and not the same old, same old. And so any amount that you can support us with, we're putting it right back into here for the production, getting the replays out, building the next thing so that more people's voices can be heard and seen and share. So that's right. Love is the key, everybody. So I want to thank you for being here with us, and thank you, team. I love you. And I am going to have us.